A pandemic driven by a virus that keeps making better versions of itself, like it's attending Tony Robbins seminars. Economy stuck in a drain, food prices causing pain, crime wave, train one, both political parties are the same one. We didn't start the fire, but we've been burning to learn since Eric Williams took his turn. Hey folks, another special episode of What You Go Do. This isn't exactly a year in review, but more like a year in rare view. Let's take a look back at 2021 with a peek into the crystal ball of what 2022 might bring. The Prime Minister tells us 2022 will be much brighter. Of course, he didn't say what indicators support that sunny outlook. You know what they say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So let's have a gander at some of TNT's biggest hits over the course of the year that told 2020, you think you were terrible? Pfft, you are an underachiever. First up, COVID-21. The pandemic is like the Tiger King series. We got the point of the first one. People are crazy. Nobody asked for season 2. The Delta variant had barely cracked its knuckles before Omicron, came on the scene. Like, you call those spike proteins? These variants and their trash talk. In TNT, we were doing the lockdown shuffle for most of 2021. You're free. Okay, now you're going to have to stay inside. Okay, you're free again. Wait, get back inside. Get back inside. In Trinidad and Tobago, the government handled the vaccination process with expert incompetence. It was the logistical equivalent of pulling a pin on a grenade but throwing the pin, not the grenade. For all the suffering and the sacrifice of prolonged shutdowns, the figures are worse than ever, and vaccination stalled out at just under the halfway mark. Still, the government continued to write their own 5-star reviews for what they consider a stellar job with management of the pandemic. That's not unusual though, because the virus has been shown to cause severe hallucinations. Even master illusionists like David Copperfield, Dr. Stephen Strange, or Pete Davidson are careful to not be seduced by their own illusions. That's not the case with folks in this PNM administration who are absolutely spellbound by their own fakery. It is also useful to keep in mind, though, it takes two for any illusion to work. The one casting the illusion and the one fooled by it. There are more than enough Trinis who, if you hand them a bag and tell them they're mints, they will eat quite a few of them before they realize, hey, these are mothballs. Also brought to its knees, the economy, a parallel pandemic. Businesses were already on the ropes long before COVID-19. The pandemic delivered the final uppercut that sent thousands of jobs and businesses to the mat and down for the count for good. Some businesses and entrepreneurs hoped the easing of restrictions would be followed by a gradual rebounding of sales and hopefully consumer confidence. But you see, the problems that strangled the economy before the pandemic are still with us. US currency, which is literally our bread and butter. One business owner wrote a letter to a newspaper telling the story of having to wait in a queue for 4 months to buy just $3,000 to pay suppliers. 4 months! Well, that's not surprising when your economic recovery strategy is hitched largely to a tax and borrow, don't study tomorrow ideology. Meantime, we had to face up to another can of corned beef we kept kicking down the road, our food supply. If you didn't notice increasing food prices, then you're probably richer than Mansa Musa. Even the humble digestive biscuit has become a digestif. The pandemic rocked the global food supply chain and was a powerful reminder of how dangerously reliant we are on food imports. It's well past time we do more to produce a higher percentage of what we eat. Chief content creator Clarence Rambarat said, we have to eat more of what we grow. No, we have to grow more of what we eat, you content creator. We are already eating as much tomato, baigan and karaili as we can manage. Look, we can't produce everything we need, but Clarence, farmers need real opportunities, not photo opportunities. This is a Caribbean island and there's no way a coconut should cost $10 and a dragon fruit as much as an actual dragon. We need more variety in fruits and vegetables, better support for niche agricultural products like cocoa, which are huge foreign exchange earners. The more people actively involved in agriculture, the greater price stability and availability we'll likely have. The pandemic won't be the last jolt to our food supply. If we don't get our act together, all we'll be left with to eat is our words, and I'm gassy enough as it is. And then there was the other scourge to contend with, crime. Banditry and violence of every variety were bad before the pandemic and economic decline. Now it feels like crime is the only thing that has returned to normal. McDonald Jacob is by all measurements the man in charge after Devil G was clumsily forced out. Jacob didn't make much of an entrance. One minute he wasn't there, the next he was, but it's still like he isn't there. The acting police commissioner, who then became the acting accounting officer for the police service, well, he doesn't seem all that interested in accounting for the performance of the police service against what has the distinct feel of criminals making up for lost time. I'm sure that's how it feels to you. We went from the gunslinging Devil G, a live action figure who wore combat fatigues to bed, chewed tobacco and swallowed it, and had more gun talk than Cutty Ranks, back to the same old khaki pants. I mean, you can't even leave an apple pie to cool on the windowsill anymore. This country is really going to need strong leadership at the helm of the police service. Speaking of which, there was the Police Service Commission snafu. Talk about undermining public trust in state institutions and statutory bodies. The Bacchanal in and around the PSC was an entirely avoidable scandal that couldn't be avoided. As the long arm of the government reached into the PSC, it exposed the troubling exposure of the Commission's members to interference. Of course, it all blew up when Gary Griffith, who is accustomed to stepping on corns, stepped on the Prime Minister's bunions. The government drew the line in the sand. This is where we tell the nation, we don't care what you think. We're going to take a disagreement and turn it into a full-blown crisis, and you're going to like it. So the PSC, like all our systems, are engineered for failure. They're operated by failures who compound the extent of the fallout on us, the imps, pimps, and chimps. Gary Griffith, meanwhile, said, TNT hasn't seen the last of me, which, to be honest, has a sort of villainesque tone. You haven't seen the last of me, you meddling kids. While Gary was boarding his train out of Dodge, another train was coming in, and it was carrying an even more scandalous scandal. Train 1 and the NGC. When board members of the NGC asked the government to give them a get-out-of-jail-free card, you knew that there was more in the mortar than the pestle, and hint, it wasn't natural gas. The government, a minority stakeholder in Atlantic LNG's Train 1, a flagship LNG plant, knew there would be no gas to keep the plant operational. But they went ahead anyway and invested $250 million to keep Train 1 alive. The government eventually conceded that there simply isn't any gas to feed Train 1, which is what industry experts were predicting all along. But they were shut down by the administration. Look, in business of this nature, there is always an element of risk. Yes, but in the context of the current economic climate, a health sector scrambling to keep its head above this pandemic, that $250 million bet was on an already buried horse was a bridge too far. Everything is falling apart and the government was busy putting money we didn't have to spend in a dry hole. Speaking of holes, there is a crumbling infrastructure. Potholes became craters. The craters became extra-dimensional portals. Apart from the menace it poses to motorists and their vehicles, decaying infrastructure is a canary in the coal mine of our long-suffering economy. Our broken bridges and roads are a metaphor for gross economic mismanagement. As a famed philosopher once said, show me your roads and I will tell you where your nation is going. That was me. When you look into those deep, water-filled potholes, you'll see a reflection of our failure as a nation. Minister of Works, Rohan Luknaman, said his ministry gets all the blame for potholes, even though they're only responsible for 21% of the nation's roads. He added that 70% of the roads that actually fall under his ministry are in good to excellent condition, and that's 100% garbage. The minister also suggested potholes are mostly the fault of WASA and overweight trucks. That's like gaining weight and blaming your wife's cooking. He speaks as though these factors have nothing to do with the government of which he is a part. It couldn't be that potholes might stem from the fact that there is little to no maintenance of roads, period, could it? Roads deteriorate over time. That's how it works. So 2021 gave us a lot to chew on, most of which we had to spit out. What's the outlook for 2022? Well, I don't have the Prime Minister's powers of clairvoyance. But the answer, it's all around us. The broken roads, bush growing everywhere, out of control crime, collapsed public institutions. The present is the marker for our future. You know, someone asked me if I could say something positive to lift our morale, give us hope for the future. Look, positivity is highly overrated. Truth is vastly underappreciated. Now, can we solve most of our problems? Absolutely. Our situation is dire but not hopeless. For as far as we have come, imagine how much further we can go if we drop the dead weight of divisive politics and myopic development. It's all up to us to show what we can do in 2022. So what do you do?